Alrighty, we're going to talk about the requirement for civil rights. During the presentation, a lot of my exhibits are in the exhibit handbook, so we'll refer to a lot of those. These are the various compliance areas under civil rights. We have the equal employment opportunities, fair housing, Section 3, and Section 504. And here are the different acts that are under equal opportunity: Title 6 of Civil Rights, Title 8 of Civil Rights, Section 109 of the Housing and Community Development Act, age discrimination, Section 3, and Section 504. Your requirements for our EEO: every local government needs to have a maintain employee records. The records, we look at these when we come to monitor you. We want to see names, positions, when they're hired, if they have a disability. All these things are on the employee records form. A sample of this form is Exhibit A45 in our Grantee handbook. And you also need to have personnel policies for everything, for compliance with equal opportunity. Here's the form in our handbook. As you can see, it lists if sex, race, birth date, handicap, when they were hired, promoted, various different things. Minority business enterprise regulations require that grantees take affirmative action to contract with small and minority-owned firms or women businesses, enterprises in the administration of the LCDBG project. Here are some examples of some affirmative action steps: contracting or registering with small business owners, 51% that are owned by minorities or women. Also, you can divide up projects for smaller companies, or they can be able to handle the workload. You can work with the Small Business Administration and very different things that you can do. You can also find new ways. You don't always have to use the examples, find different ways, creative ways for affirmative action steps. Also, every year, you have to submit a contractor and subcontractor activity form. This form is due by September 30th of each year. It goes from October 1st of the previous year to September 30th. Any contract that has not been reported to us needs to be reported on this form. Once you report the contract, you don't have to report the contract again, but you will have to submit the form every year during your grant period. You will just put negative report if you do not have a new contract to report. And if your grant closes before your report is due and you have another contract to report, send that report with your closeout document. And I will be sending out everyone, if you are paying for like admin or anything, these are in our grant, our money is paying for it. You will be getting this form so that you can fill out to report your contract. This is what the form looks like. And if you have a negative report, it tells you where to put the things. It tells you each box what you're supposed to select at the bottom. The code is everywhere. It also has an instruction page behind it in the handbook. Do you have any questions about equal opportunity? Next, we'll be discussing fair housing. So a part of your contract conditions, you have to submit a fair housing assurance. This form just assures that you don't have any complaints about to you for fair housing. And then also, if you do have any complaints, just make sure you let us know, because it's a process that we have to do. You just certifying that you don't have any fair housing complaints. This is what the form looks like in our handbook. Just gonna put the local government's name, have your chief elected official sign and date, and send that to our office. And that is a part of your contract condition. So for you, for fair housing, you also have to conduct at least one fair housing activity during your grant period. Most our grant periods last for 3 years, so within that 3 years, you need to conduct at least one. You need to have documentation of what you did and what type of what was it? Did you pass out flyers? Did you host a seminar? Did you conduct a conference? Or we have some that do various things that close out for fair housing. You are required to do that. And also another addition to that requirement is you have to conduct a fair housing assessment. This is done within your jurisdiction. And it asks you various questions about what's going on. And you're going to contact these people and you want to see, hey, what are your policies? How do you help to further fair housing? So this is your fair housing assessment. You're gonna fill it out, name of the community, your contract number, your fiscal year. It asks you about owner occupied units, renter occupied units. It's asking you what things do you have in your community? Do you have public housing? Do you have mortgage lenders, real estate brokers, zoning, building codes? It asks several questions. And if you answer yes, or you provide a number for any of these, you have to contact people. So if you don't have any of these things in your community, then you don't have anyone to contact. So part two is on the next slide, and you'll see it says rental units, public housing, mortgage lending institutions, and real estate brokers. It asks for the description of the data sources or contacts made, and it also asks for the description of policies or practices examined. Contact them, you ask them what they are doing, and then you document what they told you and the contact person. If you do not have anything, if you don't put yes to any of these on this side, those answers need to be left blank. If you put an answer that's no and it doesn't correspond to the next part, then it's incorrect and you have to redo it. Part three asks if you identify any impediments. So while you're contacting these people, different people in your local area, if you didn't find anything that they're doing wrong, or when in part one, you say yes or no, it corresponds. So just make sure if you say yes, I have rental units. Did you identify any impediments? If you didn't find any, you make sure you say no. If you put NA, then that's wrong because actually you do have someone in the area. You need to know. It needs to be a yes or no answer. Part four, if you didn't find anything, you can leave it blank or you can put NA. Part five is the same way. And the assessment must be dated, signed by the preparer and the chief elected official. So whoever conducted the fair housing assessment needs to sign it, and your chief elected official. If this is not done, it is incorrect, and we will give it back to you. During desktop monitoring, which is at 25%, we ask for this so that you have a chance to correct before we come to on-site monitor. If we come to on-site monitor and it's still incorrect, it will be a finding. Do we have any questions about fair housing assessment? I'm sorry, I can't see. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. So what's your Chatham? So you'll do it for Chatham. That whatever you have in Chatham, that's what you use. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's on our website. Hold on, let me see if I have the number for you. But don't have it right now. I'll make sure I get the exhibit number for you guys. Okay, next we're going to talk about 504. Grantee requirements for 504, you're going to have to submit us an insurance saying that you're going to comply with 504 regulation. This needs to be submitted to us prior to contract execution, but it is a part of your contract condition. This is what the form looks like in whole. The second part that's in red, it asks if you have 15 or more employees. If you do not have 15 or more employees, you just delete that section. If you do have 15 or more employees, you need to do an extra step. So you fill out this form, you have a chief elected official sign, date, send it to us with your contract conditions. Since you have 15 or more employees, you have to designate a 501 coordinator. You also have to adopt by resolution a grievance procedure that outlines due process and procedures for complaints. And you also have to take this notification right here. The grantee shall take appropriate initial and continued steps to notify participants. This has to be posted. This has to be notified. You have to put it somewhere, town hall, city hall. You can even put it inside bills just to let people know that you have it up. And also you have to put your 504 coordinator within that notification. You have to do this within 90 days of the executed contract that you receive from us. And you have different ways to do the notification. Like I said, you can put it in newspapers, magazines. You can put it in different publications, distribution, post it. You have to do it yearly. You have to also make maintain a file for us to look at. And also any employees with disabilities, they are not being discriminated against. You're making sure you have everything documented, and you when we come monitor, we can see that. So next, we're going to talk about the self-evaluation and transition plan. This is going over your buildings or structures that the local government owns. And you want to address communication, employment, program, physical accessibility. Any building that the local government owns that was built before 1988 is considered an existing facility. In your assessment, you have to identify if the facilities are new or existing. Anything prior or after 1988 will be considered new. Now, everybody doesn't have the funding to just go and renovate every building if they have problems. So instead of doing that, you can create policy. So for example, if you have handicap restaurant, if you don't have handicap accessible restaurant, and you don't have the funding to widen stall or the doorway or add grab bars, and you don't have the funding, create a policy. Hey, instead of them using this bathroom, we have this shop next door, and they can use this bathroom. That is creating a policy so that you're still in compliance with 504. Here are some different things that you can address within your self-evaluation. Parking, routes and pathways, entryways, interiors, elevators, even telephone. And like I said, if you have any policies, make sure you modify them if you do encounter those things for people to have a way to use your facilities. Have any questions about that? Visual and hearing impairment. Each grantee must ensure that members of the population eligible to be served or likely to be affected directly by a federal assisted program have visual or hearing impairment documents provided for them. How you can do that? You have someone come in your town and they may have problems with hearing, have something for them. If someone, is like, let's say deaf all the way, have an interpreter for them. If you don't have one right then, maybe you can set up a meeting and have an interpreter for them so they can you can understand everything. And also you can use different materials for people with disabilities. Each grantee must have a TDD for anyone with hearing and visual impairments. This notice must be posted in the newspaper within 6 months of your authorization to incur costs. So here are the numbers that you would post in the newspaper. Some states allow 711, but you can use it if it's available for Louisiana, but you also have to post the 800 number in the newspaper to be in compliance with our grant. Your language access plan. You have to prepare a language access plan every year, and you have to adopt it within a year of your authorization to incur costs, and you also have to review and update it annually. We monitor this at desktop and at on-site monitoring. Depending on your parish or city will determine if you have to take initial steps. So the numbers that you get from creating your 4-part analysis for your language access plan will determine if you need to provide additional services. So our language access plan example is exhibit A58 in our handbook, and the LEAP website is here, and you also can find more information on HUD, and you will use census.gov to get your data for your LEAP. Here's the our 4-factor analysis that is in our handbook. And you see they ask about the population that speaks other languages besides English and the total population. The percent on the side, that is what determines if you have to provide additional things for people. Have any questions about that? All right, it's the last section, but it's a really, really important section. Section 3. Anybody know what Section 3 is? No Section 3? Okay. Your requirements for Section 3. Any contract that HUD awarded contract that's over $200,000 automatically triggers Section 3. That's everybody. Meaning everybody has to comply. Housing demolition applies to Section 3. Rehab and construction and rehab of buildings, facilities, and infrastructure. These are some important definitions in our handbook. Labor hours. Old Section 3 used to count new hires. The new rule now counts labor hours. A Section 3 business concern is something that you, as your local government, needs to reach out to and try to find to keep on file. A Section 3 worker. A Section 3 worker is any worker who was hired within the last 5 years. Either they under the analyzed calendar year for HUD income data, they are employed by a Section 3 business concern, they are a youth bill participant. Any of these things, they only have to qualify for one, just one part. So you have 3 sections. They have one of those, they can be considered a Section 3 worker. A targeted Section 3 worker is also a Section 3 worker, but they live within 1 mile of your project. So if you're having a sewer project, they live within 1 mile of that sewer project. And they also they can be employed by a Section 3 business concern. And then also the 5 years thing. The whole thing with 5 years HUD is a lot. So meeting goals, you have to meet 2 goals when you do your contracts. 25% of your total labor hours should be obligated to Section 3 workers. Only 5% should be for targeted Section 3 workers. When they ask you what the service area or the neighborhood of the project means for a Section 3 worker is, most people, small towns do not have a population of 5,000 people. So instead, once you get to that mile of the project and you expand out because you don't have 5,000 people, what if your town or your parish has 5,000 people? Then you would just expand out to your parish and you will contact different entities because they could have already registered Section 3 workers, and you can put those on your payroll to help with your goals. Section 3 service area is not the same as your low mile area because that only pertains to your national objective. As I said, you have to do 25%. 25% for your total labor hours has to be for a Section 3 worker. 5% has to be for a targeted Section 3 worker. And here's just a little diagram of how it works. Total hours, and you see the breakdown for each individual worker. So if you have a professional service, their hours do not count against Section 3 and the labor hours. But if those professional service employ Section 3 workers, whatever work they're doing on your project, those hours can go towards your goal hours, but not the hours of the actual consultant. So say they have a secretary, and based on her income, she is below HUD's guidelines, so she could be considered a Section 3 worker. If she's doing anything with your project, you guys can use those hours to count towards your goal hours to meet your goal. But you cannot count anything that your actual admin consultant does. And so you would add those hours to the top part if they were Section 3 or if they were targeted Section 3. Any questions about that? Okay, so with that, you also must document your efforts. And document your efforts, the old way would be, oh, I'm gonna do a Section 3 business registry search in my town. I'm gonna see if we have anything. If we don't have anything, oh, I'm just gonna put this to the file, that's it. Can't do that anymore. We have to do more. Outreach, trainings, employment, these different things, you have to do more. You can't just advertise. Reach out more to gain Section 3 workers. If you don't meet them, that's why we need the documentation. So if you document up front, you don't have to do anything extra. Give us the documentation. We have to report that to HUD. And we also review it during monitoring. Ways you can do that is you might can fill certain vacancies in your town with part-time Section 3 residents. You as a town should register or certify Section 3 workers or Section 3 residents in your area. Section 3 residents can come from anywhere. Section 8 voucher holders, recently unemployed people, public housing. There are so many different avenues to find a Section 3 worker. And you need to, if you find one, you can, Exhibit A49 is the resident employment opportunity data form. It looks like this. They will fill it out, and then you will file it. You will keep it on file. Contractor requirements. We have two exhibits for a contractor, A50 and A51. Our contractor is going to A50. They're going to look at it. If they answer yes to any one of those questions, then they have to complete A51. This is A50. So it asks various questions to see if they could be considered a Section 3 business. If they do not answer any of these and they just sign it, then that's all you need. If they answer yes to any 1, 2, or 3, you need to have A51, which is a Section 3 business concern certification. And you as a grantee also need to make sure that these contractors are actually, if they are saying yes to one of these, their income matches to be considered Section 3. And you also have to make sure that you keep copies of all the forms because we look for those when we go to monitor. People can also, if you want to put on your website or anything, people can also register as Section 3 workers, businesses, or Section 3 business concerns on HUD's website. This is the Section 3 opportunity portal. And you as a grantee can also go in here and look, and they may have someone maybe in another town or close by that you can try to employ for a job. So contractors and subcontractors must provide new employee forms. This is Exhibit A52, and this form must be submitted with the payroll, the first payroll that an employee is on. And we also look for that at monitoring. And you need to put it in you need to have a separate Section 3 file. This is the form. So it's gonna ask you the name, your employer. It's gonna ask you your annual income. We don't want to give them the annual income. Allow them to put in the annual income. In order for you to certify if they actually are a Section 3 worker, you have to use HUD's income data guideline, which is this. This is the website below. You will use one person household, and you will use the low income limits to 80%. So if a person comes in and they make less than $49,700, they can be considered a Section 3 worker. If they make $49,700, they can be considered a Section 3 worker. So your reporting and compliance requirements, you have to complete a Section 3 utilization report. This is for your contractor to do. At the end of your grant, it's going to be closeouts. They're going to ask for this. He needs to tell all the hours that it took to complete the project. And then after that, he's going to say, oh, well, this amount of hours, 25% of those were to Section 3 workers. And he's a list of the amount of hours that Section 3 workers have worked. Same for targeted Section 3 workers. And with that report, you also have to submit your good faith efforts report. A Section 3 complaint may be filed by an individual representing the interests of a small business or by a Section 3 resident. If that is done, the complaint must be filed within 180 days to your local HUD field office, and those can be found on HUD. We have any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The final rule came out. So any grant after November 20th of 2020, the new rule applies. Yes, sir. Yeah, it just changed the final rule.